Okay. It's Open World Chat again. We are back with a brand new episode. I'm John Odom. I'm here with Mark Card. Mark, what's going on?
Hey, John, I think we have a good topic today. I think it was one that we just kind of made up on the fly, but I think it works.
They're all good topics. We are going to talk about movies that should be remade or some that were remade and they did a good job, maybe throw some of
Yeah.
those in. But there's a lot of movies out there we'd like to see updated or another version of. And I definitely want to talk about some that we've seen remade and that are pretty good. But we'll get to that just because, these conversations meander. How could we not meander that direction, right?
Exactly. You want
Well,
to start?
should I go? See, now, what I've got here is genre movies, right? We tend to talk genre stuff, but I've got a couple that aren't genre. I've got one that I'm going to lead with, and this is so sacrilegious. You're going to be shocked and horrified when I say
I
this.
don't know. I think very strangely so.
Okay, not a genre movie, but one of those untouchable movies you can't do, but I want to see a modern version of Gone with the Wind.
Yeah.
I
So,
want to see it reimagined. I want to see the novel reimagined and into, just let's see what happens. There's a lot of things to say that I think could be said more interestingly now without some of the, leave some of the racist baggage behind. And let's see what folks can do. What do you think of that? Am I crazy?
well, one, it's never going to be done.
No.
Gone with the Wind is such a controversial movie now that most directors or writers wouldn't go near it. Uh, Two, boy, I mean, if I were going to do that, the one thing I would make absolutely clear in this movie is that the South never had a chance ever to win the war, not under any circumstances.
Well, in the long term, I agree with you completely. Short term, they could have caused a lot of problems, but over the long haul, yeah,
It was always going to be a war of attrition, and the South did not have the industry to do it.
right, right.
They also didn't have the population.
Yeah.
And so, you would have to make it clear of how much of a complete folly the war was from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, of course, what they had was all the free labor, and they did
yeah,
have that going for them. And that, that makes up for a lot. But in the long run, that's funny to hear you say that, because in the long run, I agree 1,000%.
yeah, it just and you could do that in a way where people are overly optimistic at the beginning and then gradually, slowly realize just how stupid they were in the first place. And then the other thing I would do is you would have to make it absolutely clear that the war was being fought to maintain slavery, not for some kind of states' rights bullshit. Because boy, if you go back and read the documents, including all of the states that wrote secession agreements, slavery is mentioned in every single one of them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So and I love people who say, and I'm from one of the original Confederate states.
Hmm.
People say, well, it's part of my heritage. I said, yes, a heritage where every institution and every social grouping was designed to keep slavery around. The economy is based on slavery. The military is based on slavery. Social construction based on slavery. The law based on maintaining slavery. Everything in the South was geared toward keeping slavery. And so that would have to be part of that movie too.
Yep. There you go. Critical race theory. Right there. Totally true. I'm not even kidding.
Well, the thing is that people don't understand is that critical race theory is based on historical fact.
Right.
It's not made up. It's not pulled out of thin air. It's based on historical fact. Get over it. CRT is one way to tell the truth about history.
Yeah.
Get over it. Deal with it.
Yeah. And when I say this movie, I do want to leave some of the baggage behind, but in a more, in a bigger sense, I don't necessarily think that a remake, and this is going to be true of all the ones I mentioned, that I don't think these are movies that could be remade, that should be remade, but doing so wouldn't necessarily, at least in the ones I named, take away from the original.
Well, no, I agree. Yeah, yeah. No, no, that's yeah. And the fact is, as difficult a movie as the original Gone with the Wind is,
Mhm.
it's an American cinema classic.
Right, right. I don't have any Ocean's Elevens on my list where they took a mediocre movie and remade it into something fun. I think everything I put on my list were movies that I enjoyed. You know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's kind of an interesting. We'll stick along your lines, and you and I have had a discussion about this, and this is a little more genre specific because I think technically we're sci-fi, horror, fantasy.
Mhm.
I want to talk about remaking Seven.
Oh, you have said something about that in the past about how you thought that they missed the sort
I
of
think
missed
I
the
think they missed
the
an
potential.
opportunity here.
Yeah.
Um, the whole point of being a detective is you always get your man. You're dogged on the case. You're persistent. You want to make sure you make all the details and follow all the possible trails and not miss any clues. And that's really kind of the vibe you get, especially from the Morgan Freeman character.
Hmm.
And then you've got hotshot detective, young guy in Brad Pitt. And I think just to make it clear, you reorganize the sins so that the last sin and the worst one is pride.
Hmm.
So these detectives, their sin is pride. Because remember, all of the different victims, uh, the killer punishes them because they hold a certain sin, because
Hmm.
they're representative of a certain sin.
Hmm.
And the sin they would be guilty of would be pride. And the movie ends not only with John Doe murdering Gwyneth Paltrow, he gets away with it. They don't catch him. He's not dead in the end. And the sin is that he's so good at what he does that there's no way anybody's ever going to catch him, and he's going to kill and kill and kill again.
Wait a minute, I remember this movie totally wrong then, because I remember at the end it was Wrath, there was the
Mm-hmm.
box, and then he
Yes.
gets shot.
Yes.
So he does get shot.
Yes. He gets killed at the end.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood you then.
No, no. So he gets killed at the end. In my version, pride is the
Oh, in
sin.
your version, you were talking about your version. Okay,
Yeah,
I
in my
understand now. My
version,
bad.
the sin is pride.
Right, I
And
got you.
in my version, the detectives are so arrogant. They think they're better than this guy. They think he's going to make a mistake. They think he's going to drop the ball, and
Hmm.
he doesn't. And so the last scene is them Pitt being cashiered out because he gets injured so badly in the shootout with the guy. Morgan Freeman retiring because this was his last case. And in the last scene, you see Kevin Spacey murdering somebody.
Hmm. There you go. Yeah, so I think I won't edit that out. I'll leave in me sounding like a confused idiot. So, all right, that's cool. That's
So I think that, and far be it for me to say I'm a better filmmaker than David Lynch, but I think that's the mistake they make with this movie. Pride should be the last sin, and it should be. And so, with a movie as dark as that was, leaving the killer out there to murder again and again and again and again because you were so arrogant that you thought you could catch him, that's a darker ending than the guy getting shot in the head and he
yeah.
can no longer kill anybody.
David Fincher.
Yeah, David Fincher, not
Because
sorry.
of the recent David Lynch.
Yeah,
Well,
no, my brain hears Lynch and Fincher and makes them the same.
Fincher, Lyncher.
But no, uh, I love David Fincher's work. I think he's really great, but I think he could have made this a more ambiguous, more organically evil ending.
Yeah.
So I think they missed an opportunity of that. All right, let's get back to kind of more what we usually talk about.
Well, you know what I think is screaming for a remake as a
Yeah.
miniseries is Things to Come. H.G. Wells, based on The Shape of Things to Come. Um, I think it could be. I think it could be an incredible miniseries now, especially since the beginning of it, so much of it is about a pandemic.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
yeah.
a perfect kickoff.
Yeah.
It's got themes of well, it's got what am I trying to say? It's a little bit manifest destiny of the universe,
Mhm.
which might be a little distasteful, but it's the kind of thing you could drop off there. And it's the original is also very much a unintentionally anti-environmentalist movie. You could also reimagine and leave that there. I don't think that's just the kind of thing that anybody was thinking about at the time. This whole idea of man dominating nature is such a big part of things to come. But I think it screams for a miniseries. It'd be great.
No, I think it would be too. I think there was a lot of themes back then that still apply now.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, no, I think that's a good example of that. Um, but I do think it needs to be a miniseries. I don't think you could do it as a feature film.
Oh yeah, the film itself was too rushed. There was too much going on.
Yeah,
It was 3 movies.
it suffered a little bit, I think, from ADHD.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, let's see here.
What you got for me? You got one?
All right, I'm just making a little change to my lineup here. I'm going to start with one that I think is a great movie. I think it's difficult. This is another one of those things that it would be very difficult to do right because the original movie, and it's already been remade, but the original movie is just stellar.
Hmm.
That's 1962's Manchurian Candidate.
Oh, right, right. I knew you were
Now,
gonna.
some people go, well, that's a spy thriller. That's not a science fiction movie. Yeah, it is.
Well,
And
yeah,
and
it's speculative. Maybe it's technology, speculative science, anyways.
yeah, it's so we all know about the CIA attempts to uh, develop sleeper agents who don't know they're sleeper agents, and to find ways to use brainwashing and hypnosis to ensure that these people will act as sleeper agents, but don't know they're sleeper agents. They're just, general, um, uh, they just act as though they're normal people in society
Right.
until they're called up and they see the Queen of Hearts, or they, uh, are given a certain set of phrases. I mean, this is in a lot of different movies. I mean, this is in Captain America: Winter Soldier.
Oh,
This
yeah.
kind of
Well, a Civil War at least.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, no, I just mean the brainwashing techniques
Oh,
for
right,
sure.
right, right. Yeah.
And so, but the fact is, this doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. You can't make people kill someone where they don't know what they're doing. I mean, it's
Right.
just the human mind is stronger than hypnosis. You
Yeah.
can't really make people do what they don't want to do.
Hmm.
And so it's definitely a science fiction movie. For those of you who
That's
don't know this
sci-fi that doesn't know it's sci-fi, like we talked
exactly,
about before.
and I think I told you once before that, snap my fingers because, man, that was a great example of that.
Well,
Um,
you got it in there.
well, yeah, late, but uh, but if you don't know the story, it's a little bit complicated. It's about the Russians or the Chinese and both working together to get a candidate which is a sleeper agent for them as president of the United States. So to me, it's a bit like Nostradamus, given the situation we have now. Um, but it's a terrific movie. It's got Frank Sinatra in it. It has Janet Leigh in it. It's a great movie.
Oh, it's excellent. Yeah, absolutely. Great movie.
Like I said, it's a classic in American cinema. It's really terrific. And the director actually made some more contemporary films that were terrific too. Did you see the spy thriller Ronin?
No, I did
It
not.
had an all-star cast. It was Robert De Niro and Jean Reno and a whole bunch of people in
I
it.
remember it after you took me a minute, but I remember when it came out. Yeah.
It's a great movie. It's about it's kind of the spy version of Repo Man or the spy version of Pulp Fiction. There's a mysterious briefcase that about 10 different spy factions are all trying to get their hands on, and you never know what's in it.
That's excellent.
Anyway, John Frankenheimer is the director of Manchurian Candidate. And this one it's already had a remake, which was just terrible,
Yeah. Denzel Washington, right?
awful. And Meryl Streep.
Yeah, right.
It's one of the few movies that neither one of those actors could elevate.
Hmm.
It was bad. It
Yeah.
was really bad. And part of the reason why it was really bad is there just wasn't any kind of big bad behind the scenes the way Russia and China were in 1962.
Yeah.
I pretty much think you could rework that part of the bad remake now. I think there are a lot of big threats here,
Mhm.
and in our situation now, and I think it's a lot more threatening than it was in 1962.
Mhm.
You have a lot of non-state actors, which is kind of the way they wanted to go with the remake, but it's the story is super condensed and super compact. And it's a little bit convoluted, but in general, it's very gripping, very interesting kind of story. And you could update the brainwashing techniques. I mean, this kind of runs a dangerous line, but there's all kinds of things you could do with augmented reality or virtual reality here
Mhm.
in terms of brainwashing them because that's kind of what happens with LSD in the movie The Manchurian Candidate.
Mhm.
The whole scene where it looks like they're in front of a giant garden party with society women, but it's really the Chinese and the Russian officials overseeing it.
Yeah, I haven't seen this movie in like 30 years, but you're bringing it all back to me. That's pretty cool.
It's a great movie. It's just spectacular, and it needs to be remade, but it has to be done the right way. I don't have any idea who would do any of the casting. This is the most fun part to me about how are you going to remake this movie is what cast you put. I mean, who could you put in for Frank Sinatra? I have no
Oh,
idea.
there's the casting game. We should
Yeah,
we should have a casting game episode
we'll
sometime.
do that.
That's
That's a
fun.
good one.
So, you talk about movies that should be remade and that have been remade and that were a terrible failure. I think one on that list for me is The Day the Earth Stood Still, which I
Yeah,
talked about. I think is one of the most influential sci-fi movies ever. It was remade in that I forget when. It was somewhere around 2004 or something. That's probably way
yeah,
off. But it's Keanu Reeves, and it was terrible. The remake was terrible,
yeah,
and part of it is, when you make a movie, you want to bring something new to it. You don't
yeah,
want to be slavish. You don't want to do like Gus Van Sant did with Psycho. His Psycho was a scene by scene, shot by shot redoing. It wasn't a
yeah,
remake. It wasn't. He just made the same movie with different actors. And
yeah.
what's the point? That sounds like a pretty uninteresting project for a film school. Why would anybody want to pay to see that? So
And
you don't
poorly
want to.
casted actors too.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to do that.
No,
You don't want to stay slavishly close, but you also don't want to completely pretend the original idea and the original story never existed. And that's what the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still was. It is unrecognizable. There's the only thing in common is some of the names of some of the characters,
right,
but it
right,
has nothing to do with the basic idea of the original. And the original had something to say that would be of real value right now. I mean, the only thing the remake did right was they gave it an environmental focus, but
right.
that was it. And I think an honest remake with an environmental focus, reimagined for modern era, would be a fantastic thing to remake. I think people would like to see it. I think people need to see it.
Yeah. Oh no, I agree. I agree. That's a strong candidate for a remake, which has been remade badly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love Keanu Reeves and some of the stuff he's done.
Oh, yeah.
He was not good for this.
Keanu Reeves is my hero. Absolutely.
Well, as a human being, you can't find any better human being than
Right.
him, especially as a famous human being.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to behave the way he does at all.
Well, and he had no chance in this piece of crap movie.
No, I know. Yeah,
Uh,
no, no, no,
yeah.
no, no. Yeah, he definitely didn't have any direction to go here. The material's terrible.
Yeah.
Uh, it no, it was a failure from the very beginning. Okay, well, we've already talked about this movie an episode or two ago, but I think it could be really incredible, and that's The Lathe of Heaven. I think it needs the full feature, big budget version, or it needs to be a miniseries, like or a limited series. It needs to have maybe a couple of seasons, I think, and it needs to be a Netflix slash Apple slash Prime big budget miniseries.
Apple's the ones I trust these days. Make it
Yeah,
Apple.
me too. I've been watching Ted Lasso, and it's kind of funny. You're supposed to empathize with Ted Lasso, but I find myself empathizing with Roy Kent. Those of you who've seen this show know what I'm talking about. But The Lathe of Heaven just has so many questions about environmentalism, about the proper role between patient and therapist, the proper role between uh, society as a whole and individual liberty. It is terrific. I think it verges into fantasy after a while, but it's definitely a firm science fiction movie because not only do we find this guy who has the ability to alter the fabric of reality with his dreams, they use what is it called? A lucid dreaming machine, so the psychiatrist can control the dreams.
Hmm.
So it's definitely a science fiction movie. Uh, and one of the big problems with the current movie is it was the very first movie made by a public TV station, very first feature, WNET, but they use a Beatles song.
Hmm. Uh-huh. Which one?
And so that's the reason why you can't, uh, why they can't rebroadcast it,
Oh, that's funny.
because it's just too damn expensive now
Hmm.
to uh, pay the Beatles, or I
And
guess in this case,
Jackson's estate.
Michael Jackson's estate.
All right.
To
Which
use
song was it?
I get by with a little help from my friends,
Oh, okay.
and it's actually kind of integrated into the story, and so they played a lot, and so you just can't do it.
Hmm.
So, but it has a lot of interesting themes. It has a lot of problems that we still haven't worked out now. Um, and I think if you were going to tagline this movie, it would be careful what you wish for.
Hmm. I need to check
Brilliant
it out.
movie.
I
I
don't
think the
know.
visuals could be so much better now than they were during that. But at first I thought, we need to have a feature movie, and then I thought, no, that's not going to work. It needs to be a couple of seasons of a mini series. I think it has the potential to be every bit as good as the first season of Westworld.
Hmm. Wow. Hey, I'd watch it. Sounds good to
I
me.
just wouldn't want it to fall apart the way Westworld did in season three.
You know what I was just thinking that I'd like to see? This is different than the others too, but it
Okay.
occurs to me, and it almost makes me sad to say this because I don't think this was a bad movie at all. I enjoyed the movie. In fact, I'm thinking of going and watching it again. But I would like to see 2010 Odyssey 2 remade.
Yeah. In doing research for this thing, I saw a lot of uh, suggestions. I went through a lot of lists about what other people think they should
Hmm.
remake, and one of them was 2001. And I was like, no,
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 that
no.
goes on my list of should never be remade that we'll be
Yeah, me,
talking about next time.
me too. Because let me just tell you, I don't care that you could do all these cool CGI. No, no, I don't care. I don't care. Because we have better special effects now is not necessarily a reason why you should do a remake.
No, they
In
nailed the
fact,
special effects anyway. There's nothing to complain about there.
oh, but they were compared to now, they're so simple.
Oh, pish
No,
tosh. It's just people who have to have everything digital. Practical, they did amazing stuff with practical effects.
no, they did great. And in fact, even the movie with George Clooney and Sandra Bullock about how she's marooned in space,
Oh yeah, Gravity.
Gravity,
Mhm.
that movie used the same techniques that Stanley Kubrick used for Zero Gravity. Exact same techniques, exact same practical effects.
Work.
So yeah, that's who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares about what CGI you can put in this
Oh
movie?
yeah. And I mean, I think of the wormhole scene. It's perfect.
Yeah,
I mean, the stuff they did with practical lights and the tunnel effects, unbelievable. No reason to
yep.
touch that. That's silly.
There is no reason for that at
No.
all. And
But
so, no,
2010,
you can't
2010
do
was a good movie.
it. It
I
was.
like Roy Scheider. I think he was a little miscast. But it should have been, given the one it was following up, it just should have been better. It
Yeah.
had a little bit of a cheese factor put in that wasn't in the book. Use them forever, use them in peace. I remember watching that thinking, what the hell is that?
That's
Um,
Cold War stuff.
That's that because that wasn't from the book. Uh,
Right.
it was very mechanical, and that was part of the point in the book is we're the aliens and we're doing our thing. Back off. There was no feel good to it. Um, it was just very, very sterile almost, which is much, yeah, which it was very Clarky. But
Yeah.
I just like to see someone take that on again and maybe do it a little better. That's all. No, you know,
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a good one. I think it is an underrated movie. I do think they play the Cold War tension very nicely,
they did. It's true.
especially when they're ordered to take down the bridge of the Leonov
Hmm. Also,
between.
stuff that did not happen in the book.
Yeah, they need to get rid of that some of that stuff.
Yeah.
All
No.
right, I've got another one. I don't know if it could be done because it's so period specific, but I'd like to see an updated version of Night of the Comet.
Oh yeah.
I think it could be done. I think
Mhm.
Gen Z or even Gen Alpha has the difference in language, the difference in media understanding, the difference in culture to where you could make it specific to them.
Mhm.
I just think it's a strong, not a strong woman, a strong women
Mhm.
movie from the 90s. And I think that's a really interesting period in time for science fiction movies. Uh, I think you could capture the whole um, attuned to social media thing. They would find out that on social media that something can happen because of this comet.
Mhm.
They would be able to, talk to each other about what's going on. They would get their news from social media, not from a radio station.
Mhm.
Um, I just think it's a really good story about these people who have to deal with some bad circumstances and do it by using all their advantages that they have, and that, it's part of their culture and part of their whole vibe. I think it'd be a great movie. I think it would do really well, and you could put in cutting edge music, and you could, have really good effects for the zombies. And I don't think the zombie genre's dead yet.
No, not quite. People are still, I mean, it's mostly dead, but every now and then somebody does something creative with it to keep it going.
Well, I think the biggest potential example of that is going to be 28 years later.
Yep, yep. You ever see the girl
Oh,
with the gifts? Girl
no,
with all the gifts, I guess is it. It was
no,
based.
I haven't seen that one yet, but I'd like to.
That's creative. That's very creative take on the zombie genre. You should check it out. Anybody listening, go check that out. It's another. It's one I should have been on my underappreciated genre movies
That's
list.
okay. There's lots of that stuff out there.
Yeah,
We
it's
got to
true.
figure it out.
It's true.
All
So
right.
I'm going to say something. Another
Sorry
one.
about that.
One more thing that is maybe a little nervy again, but I think about every 30 years or so, I'd like to see another real visionary director take on and make their own version of The Lord of the Rings.
Ooh.
I think that should be returned to regularly because there's so
Ooh.
much to mine there. You know, I don't want to just see Peter Jackson's version. When I'm 80, I want to see a whole different interpretation, different actors. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are you trying to get swatted?
No,
Are you
I
trying to
think
have,
that would be
are you are you trying to have people dressed up like Gandalf rapping on your door like it's the Mines of Moria?
well, but it's like I said, it doesn't I don't think it would take away anything from the original just because the original book series is still the dominant. I mean, we talk about some of these movies that they're based on books, but the film, you know, like oh, I mentioned Psycho, right? Um, does anybody even remember that there was a book? But still,
Yeah.
the primary source for The Lord of the Rings is still that series of books by Tolkien. And I
Well,
think
and honestly,
because
I
of
really,
that, you could redo it.
as good as the original three movies are,
Mhm.
I think Peter Jackson fell pressed to his own vibe.
Well, by Hobbit, he sure did. Whew,
Yes. Yes.
good boy.
Too many movies,
Yeah.
too much stuff. How dare you add a character to The Hobbit?
Well, and
How dare you, sir? How dare you?
He missed the whole vibe of The Hobbit too. He just wanted to make more Lord of the Rings movies. Hobbit
Right,
had a
right. He was just,
completely different
you want
vibe.
to do that? Make the Silmarillion, for God's sake.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
Um, and that's a movie I would like to see be made.
mhm.
But that's just because I'm such a mythology guy.
Yeah, that would be fun. Well, I mean, they're playing around with pieces of that in the Rings of
Yeah,
Power.
but again, they're playing too much with the material, I think.
Yeah, and it's been
So,
kind of a, I find it kind of sterile. Um,
yes. Yeah, it's just more of, hey, we should do some more Lord of the Rings stuff.
yeah.
But no, I think you're right. My initial reaction was the same thing that I think people said when they heard Peter Jackson was going to remake Lord of the Rings. And look how well that turned out. Yeah, I think there could be reinterpretations of it. I think there should be. I think you should write the Lord of the Rings and set it during World War II.
Oh, wouldn't that be interesting? I'm not sure how you'd pull that off, but I'd love to see it tried.
And well, considering that's kind of one of the contexts of the novel to begin with,
Hmm.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, that'd be
Of
fun.
course, the person who played the hobbits would have to be the Brits.
Of course, you couldn't have Americans in any
But
kind, in
I
any
think that's just
reimagining. That would just be wrong.
yeah, and it's like an American Sergeant Rock. I mean, a British Sergeant Rock, for
Right,
God's sake.
right, exactly. Hey, so you
Okay,
got a few movies that you think were good remakes you want to throw out at me? Because I got a list myself that I put together. I don't know, I'm sort of dropping this on you here, but
remakes that were good. I don't know. I'm slow. It's going to be hard for me to think of any of this stuff. Oh well, yeah, of course. I mean, there's some really great examples of this. The Thing.
The Thing I was on, yeah, absolutely.
That's a brilliant remake of that movie. And then,
Hmm.
of course, there's the 1978 Donald Sutherland Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yep, Philip Kaufman
That's a genius movie.
did Unbearable
Um,
Lightness of Being and The Right Stuff. It was a really, yeah, it was great. I agree completely.
Another one that comes to mind is a movie that, as I said, originally wasn't a science fiction movie, and neither is the remake, but I think it affected science fiction movies, is The Big Clock.
Oh
They
yeah.
actually did a 1948 or 1949 version of The Big Clock, a big, terrible, confusing mess, just like the book. But the best remake of that was No Way Out with Kevin Costner and Sean Young and Gene Hackman.
Which I still haven't seen, and you've told me I should see, and I still haven't done it, and I'm not doing my homework. I apologize.
Well, I haven't seen Akira either.
Oh, okay.
Uh, and that's an interesting one that we you could talk about more in detail than I can because I haven't seen it. But I saw a couple of people say that they should remake Akira.
That's a tough one. I wonder if that would be on my do not touch this list. It could be.
Well, they
Okay.
were talking about doing it as a live action, not as an anime. But in my experience, a lot of the anime turned live actions, they're terrible.
Oh, wait a minute. The live action Akira. Of course. I've been hearing about this for years. I just drew a total mental blank. I think the last person who was being attached to it for a while was Taika Waititi. That
Ooh,
was a
he would,
long time ago, though. And I
yeah.
might be making that up. Maybe this was a dream I had, but yeah, yeah, people talking about it. I don't know that he'd be a good choice, but again, I might be crazy.
He
I should
would be if somebody could, for God's sake, restrain him a little bit. Oh, I wanted to say something about Lathe of Heaven that I forgot to say.
Mhm.
I think you make that a cyberpunk movie
Cool.
because it takes
I'm
place
down
in
for that.
Seattle. It
Yeah.
takes place in Seattle where it's rainy all the time and dark all the time.
It's not really that bad, but it's close.
Yeah.
Close enough. Well, a couple real quick movies that have been remade that I think they did a great job with was Cronenberg's Fly. The
Oh,
Fly.
yeah. 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 Yeah.
That
Definitely.
was a reimagining that really built on the foundations of the original. It didn't completely throw out the original like Day the Earth Stood Still, and really imagined it. And it was great. And then I Am Legend too. The Will Smith version was remake of the old I Am Legend and Omega Man.
Yeah. Yeah. I know the author of the short story hated Will Smith's version, hated it,
No
hated it.
kidding.
Yeah.
It deviated a lot. It was definitely a reimagining by far, but I thought it was another one of those cases of the foundations were there, but it was a
Yeah.
different vision, and
I have
whatever.
a story. I have a story about I Am Legend. My girlfriend and I went to see it, and this was, before they really had the system of reserving seats at a theater ahead of time down. And we were late, and by the time we got there, there were no seats.
Hmm.
So we stood in the aisle uh, and watched it standing up.
Yeah.
So I like that movie, but it could have been better, much, much better.
Oh, it could have been better. I agree. It wasn't perfect. Neither was The Fly, for that matter. But and the imperfection thing. I mean, King Kong, Peter Jackson's King Kong, I think was a solid remake, but it was very flawed.
Yeah.
But
All right. There's a couple more I want to talk about before we're done.
okay.
Silent Running.
Yeah, Silent Running is definitely ripe for a remake.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I agree
Especially
1,000.
because all of the environmental problems that were considered science fiction in 1971 are real and here, and we're going to have to start looking for drastic solutions to.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are a
And
few, God, I feel like I could just about name a director or two that would do a good job with it. And I'm not, there's some,
and you've had some environmental. Sorry about that. I live close to a fire station.
no, I didn't hear anything.
Um, and the only problem I have is who the hell do you cast as Bruce Dern in the Bruce Dern role?
Hmm. That'd be a good one. That would be a good role to find a talented newcomer.
I agree. He's the best thing about Bruce Dern is he's so quietly crazy,
Hmm.
especially in this movie. You can just see that the stress of taking care of this massive forest is just slowly crushing down on him, and he slowly gets driven more and more to a radical situation. And
Hmm.
honestly, I think that's kind of a good metaphor for what's going on with global warming
Hmm.
in both directions, in that slowly global warming is getting worse and worse and worse. And slowly the pressure to do nothing about it is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I think that's a really good, and this is one of those movies where I think special effects could really be a lot better. It could
Yes. Yeah.
add something to this movie a lot. But if you don't concentrate on the story and all you do is try to improve this special effects, it's going to be terrible.
Right. Right. And that's so you worry that when people do talk about remakes, that that's all they have in mind. Like you said, for 2001, wouldn't it be cool to have this with better special effects? That's not
Dude,
enough. It's not
yeah.
enough.
No, no. That's not a good reason to do a remake. You got to start with a great story that was either done well and could be changed direction to, or was
Mhm.
not done well enough and could be improved.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think those are good things the way to do it. But Silent Running, I think, would be really great. Um, I think it's a movie, and I seem to recall this about the movie originally, where you don't use a lot of music.
Right. The
Well, I
music.
mean, not just because it's called Silent Running, but because you're going to be out there in space and there's not much noise going on the outside. And really, the only soundtrack you should have should be the sounds of the wildlife in the forest.
Yeah, and the music was off-putting in the original.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. We talked about that, how that was a real problem.
Yeah.
But I think that's a movie that you make be largely silent. So I think that one has a lot of potential for. It's a great story. It could be told with better effects, better sound editing, great casting. I think it's a prime remake.
Yeah. A director, I was just looking him up. It would be a dangerous director to pick for something like that because most of his stuff is just sort of big budget, bombastic Hollywood schlock. But Duncan Jones directed Moon, and Moon had the vibe that you could have for Silent Running. So big
Yeah,
risk because of his other stuff. He directed, I'm looking at him now, Warcraft and Source Code. Don't want to see that kind of sensibility come to a movie like that. But the sensibility of Moon, if he could rediscover that inner director, I think would be a great fit.
you know who his dad is, right?
No,
David Bowie.
Really?
Yes.
I had no idea.
Yes. So David Bowie has the name Bowie because Davy Jones was already taken from the Monkees. So David Bowie's real name is David Jones.
I did not know that.
And Duncan Jones is his father. I mean, is his son.
I had
So
no
yeah,
idea.
would I trust the son of David Bowie to make this movie? Absolutely.
All right. We're in agreement. Now we just got to make it happen.
Do you have anything more?
No, I'm good. What
I
you?
got one left.
Uh-huh.
I say the best one for last.
Okay.
People love this movie, and I think it does not live up to its potential. And I have to disagree with uh, Jordan Peele on this. He says this guy is the unmitigated master of horror. Not Wes Craven. I'll tell you the movie They Live, John Carpenter.
Oh, yeah. Hey,
I
second
think
time it's
they
come up.
I think They Live is a good movie. I don't
Mhm.
think it's a great movie.
I agree. I think it's not as it's like awesome in a way, but then actually as a piece of cinematic art, it's lacking. It feels a little like a TV movie.
It's too campy.
Mm.
And it's too campy because you have professional wrestlers in roles.
Well, now there's professional wrestlers who have done a perfectly good job in movies.
Oh, listen, I agree. I agree. But we're talking about 80s professional wrestlers. And I'll tell you who I would put in this movie that now that we mentioned it, and because he's a serious actor but hasn't been taken that way yet, and that is Dave Bautista. He would kill in this role.
Yeah, it's true. Speaking of
Now,
wrestling.
the reason why I originally wasn't going to put this on the list, but I went back and I read the short story that the movie's based on.
Mhm.
It's called 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. Don't know it.
It's about 900 words.
Jeez.
It's 6 pages on my iPhone. Let me just tell you, I know why you could make a movie out of this, having reread the story. And it's just got such potential. It is the whole parable of Plato's parable of the cave.
Hmm. Yeah.
One day, a guy picks up a pair of sunglasses and puts them on, and he sees the world as it really is,
Right.
a world where humans are subjugated by aliens who have hidden themselves through hypnosis and the mass media.
But nobody wants to hear it.
That's right.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah, it's true. That's a good comparison.
this is an incredible movie. This is Plato's Parable of the Cave, and I wish I'd thought of this when we did Greek mythology hidden as sci-fi.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what this is. And better effects would help here, although they were pretty good at the time. Better acting. As much as this movie is beloved for it, I think the 10 or 12-minute fight scene is just god awful and detracts from the plot.
I still kind of love it. I can't help it.
Oh, I like it for the camp, but I really was annoyed by it when I first saw the movie. I was like, oh, this is going, oh,
It's like the They Live equivalent of when the Enterprise went, when they went around the Enterprise for 10 minutes in the motion picture, right?
it's too long. It's just too long. And I get it. It's the whole metaphor for this guy's right, but nobody wants to hear it. But it's too long. It's too long. It's too long. It detracts from the movie. It stops the action dead in its tracks.
Hmm.
And the interesting thing about the short story is it's 6 tiny little pages, but man, bang, 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 bang.
Hmm.
It just one thing happens after another, after another, after another, and then it's over. And so it needs to be remade. It does. It really needs to be remade. It needs to be remade by a serious director who will take it seriously as a piece of cinema.
Well, on an absolutely hearty agreement from me. Um, yeah, I think we've covered a fair range here.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to the riff we're going to do on this, which is movies that should not be remade at all.
I'm thinking of that as this is the two-part episode, and that's part two. So we'll
Yeah, I
be
agree.
doing that one next time for sure. All right,
All right.
folks. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Hope you guys enjoyed this one.
Our theme music is by Christopher Piatek.